Hello, everyone.
Hey,
We are here
how's
with our regular weekly streamcast.
StreamCast? That has happened every week that we didn't take, 6 weeks off of?
Yep, we never, ever miss one.
Never one. We've been consistent every time.
And my computer is completely frozen now, too, so that's
And
awesome.
that's great. Yeah. For those of you who have been wondering where we've been during our regular weekly streams, um, basically my internet has been bad since August,
And
and
so is my schedule.
the schedule. So it's been
Are we still
okay.
here?
Maybe. Oh, we've resumed. We've resumed.
Okay, good. I don't know what's going on. My computer's trying to remember how to do this. It's
It might
uncertain.
need a minute. It might
Yeah.
just need a minute.
Huh, don't we all?
Right?
Um,
Oh man.
well, we are here today with a special spooky Star Wars, just like Nolan says, episode of our streamcast. All the spooks and all the spectaculars because we are talking about Star Wars Red Harvest.
Yes.
We
I
are.
have there we go.
Yep, there we get Jess's costume. Let me switch to that so you can see this in all of its
Glory.
glory. There you
Previously seen on any video I ever did where I talked about Yoda.
go. But yeah, we want to talk today. So if you remember, as kind of a prototype, I guess, if you want to think about it that way, for our
Yeah.
streamcast, we did, I guess, really two prototypes. There's things that kind of ended up that way. We did
Hmm.
some video chat reviews of the books, Guardians of the Wheels,
And
and
Rebel
and
Rising.
Rebel Rising, and then also a separate video last Halloween on Death Troopers, and we really liked doing that and having those sort of long form conversation. I mean, we're having these long form conversations with each other anyway, so
Yes.
we were like, let's do it in front of a camera because that couldn't possibly make it any different or more awkward than it is
Right.
already. Um, and so after that, we decided, well, instead of just doing it in front of the camera, we'll do it live. You know,
Yes.
Bill O'Reilly style. We'll just do it live.
We'll do it live. Less swearing.
Yeah, well, that you know of.
there is also some spin because when our stream freaks out, you get the spinny dial.
Oh,
when
there
try
you
to
go.
watch
There
it.
you go. This is not the no spin zone here. I'm ashamed that I know that.
Well, I mean, it's pop culture.
Yeah, well. Anyway, but so last Halloween, we did a review of Joe Schreiber's book Death Troopers, which was about
Death Troopers.
zombie stormtroopers.
Do I own? Which I don't think I own. I think I got that one from the library.
I'm pretty sure I do, but in usual Port Haven Streamcast style, I'm not prepared and have that handy to be able to show it off.
Well, we're not
Um,
talking about that one anyway. You should go watch the video on it.
Yeah, it's linked in the description if you want to go see that. And I do have a slide here. You can see the covers for Death Troopers and Red Harvest there. So
Hmm.
they're meant to be kind of a pair
Yes.
in a way, at least in the sense that Red Harvest is meant to be a prequel to Death Troopers, but they're also very different
Very
in
different.
a lot of ways, and in ways that I think I enjoyed. So as much as I
Hmm.
enjoyed Death Troopers, I almost think I like Red Harvest better. Um,
I would say I think that Death Troopers is the better written book, but Red Harvest is more fun.
right.
Red Harvest is way more fun.
Yeah, and well, I think this is something we talked about too that I was thinking about as I was getting ready for this, and I can show this too. We talked about this last year about how Death Troopers was like a Star Wars Galaxies novel in a way,
Kind of, yeah.
like,
That's right.
and so like I'd forgotten about that completely until I was looking up images for Death Troopers and stuff. But I feel like in a lot of ways, Death Troopers was kind of hemmed in because like it was so weird to me reading Death Troopers and this is spoiler, I guess, if you haven't read this, but we did a video on it last year, and you can go watch that if you're curious. But
it's not
like,
too spoilery anyway,
right.
I think.
Well, not any more than the image spoils it for you anyway, because what I was going to say is that Han and Chewie just sort of randomly show up
halfway through the book.
Yeah. Like in this way that is not organic or natural or anything. They're just kind of there all of a sudden. And this book doesn't really have that problem. It's not trying to shoehorn anything in a way that doesn't feel natural. And so I think you're right. I think this book is more fun in a lot of ways. I think that's a good way of putting it. And just to give everybody a little bit of a context, these are zombie books. Are these the only Star Wars horror novels?
There are there are chapter books called Galaxy of Fear, which I've always wanted to read and I haven't read. But they're like old legends, like probably late 90s, early zeros, maybe.
Right.
Maybe even earlier than that. So like there's a couple of like kid books that are like that. This same author wrote a novel called Darth Maul Lockdown, which I've never read. It's the only one he wrote for Star Wars that I haven't read, so I'm kind of pitching that idea for next Halloween maybe. I don't know if it's a horror book or not though, but I know he's a horror author, so I would assume it is.
Yeah.
But
but either way, these are the only two Star Wars horror things that I've read before.
Yeah, same. I haven't read any of the other ones that would be.
And I again, it's a very different sort of thing for me because I've never read any horror novels really apart from these. But I really enjoyed it. But so like the premise of this, like with a lot of zombie stuff, I guess, is that there is a virus that kind of spreads. And Red Harvest, we see that virus in the zombie stormtroopers and other zombies in Death Troopers, but in Red Harvest we kind of get the origin of that. I mean, I guess origin in a way, also in the sense that it had happened before, but but origin.
But so different.
Yeah, of that virus and how it kind of started.
Yeah, and basically the first book obviously is called Death Troopers. It kind of the cover kind of shows you it's about like zombie stormtroopers.
Right.
This one is about zombie Sith Lords.
Yeah, because what could possibly go wrong with
zombie Sith Lords?
Zombies that can use the Force. Nothing problematic.
No, it's gonna be fine. Everyone's gonna be fine.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because there are some things. One of the things that I guess I can say I liked about this novel, but that were different to me in this novel, is that we see some new Force things in this, which I don't think are like contradictory to the things we know about the Force, but are different from other things we have seen, like Force sensitive plants that you can like have conversations with.
Very chatty plants.
Yeah. But then like Force zombies as well. So what do you think about like just the way, it's always something I care about in a Star Wars novel, just the way that the Force is portrayed. Yeah, in the book.
It's funny that I didn't think of the plant thing the first time I read it. I read this when it came out, and I was like a freshman in college. It was a little ways ago, and then I haven't read it since. To me, the plant thing, it felt like, I think the first time I read it, I didn't really get that it was a Force sensitive plant. I thought that it was just a special plant, and that Zoe, who's one of the main characters in the book, she's a Jedi, and her like particular thing is she's good with plants, and so like I took it that way. And then reading it this time, I really realized that it was that the orchid, the plant, was itself Force sensitive, and that's kind of like where the virus came from.
Right.
It's just like, I don't really know. Like, I think it makes sense that there are certain species of things. Like we've seen animals that are more inclined to the Force, like the, how would you pronounce it, the Vornsker, or whatever. I guess that's Legends now, but this is Legends too, so that's fine.
I mean, but there are plenty of Force sensitive animals in new canon too, just from Rebels.
Yeah, that's for sure. I guess my question is, what's the difference between the orchid and the tree alien?
Oh yeah, well I guess I don't know. I guess the book at least treats the tree alien as sentient in a way that it doesn't treat the flower.
The orchid, yeah.
But at the same time, the orchid does have like a personality and like a consciousness. So I don't know. I guess in my mind, like the tree thing was Treebeard from Lord of the Rings,
right?
But inhabiting a Sith library, and the plant. I guess one of the differences is that the orchid expresses its consciousness through the Force.
Yes.
And the tree creature does not.
It's like Treebeard or Groot, but dark side.
Right. I missed it in the chat, so I can't see who said it. You can scroll back, but somebody talked about zombie tauntauns too, and I know that's that's one of your favorite parts of.
That is one of my. I don't know who said it. Whoever said it, let me know who said it because I missed it too. Midway. Hey, Midway. Midway said it too. Yeah, I distinctly remember. So I took a picture of it. It's probably, I think I actually, don't tell Sticks, but I dog-eared the page. But this is my favorite page in Star Wars, and it's literally these two characters, and they've gone into a stable where there's tauntauns, the snow goats from Empire Strikes Back, and there's zombie tauntauns that spit loogies that infect you, and then partway through the scene, Sith zombies that have crawled inside the zombie tauntauns cut their way out of the zombie tauntauns and attack. So it's like Luke getting stuck in a tauntaun, only like on purpose, and it's to kill you. And I don't know why, but it's one of the most beautiful things.
It's the Trojan zombie tauntaun.
Yes.
Like that's exactly what it is. It's the Trojan tauntaun.
I'm actually really curious because I know I told you that this book had one of my favorite pages in Star Wars in it before you read it, but I wouldn't tell you what it was. So at any point in time, did you hit a point where you went, this must be Jess's favorite part?
I mean, there was a lot of stuff that I enjoyed and I thought was cool. So I don't know that it necessarily stood out to me as this is the thing. But when we were reading this, I think you were like a day or so behind me.
Yeah.
And so like when you got to it and you were telling me what was coming, I knew that was the part that
was gonna be the part.
Yeah.
So Batman, this is not canon anymore, unfortunately, but it's still worth a read.
It was at one point though. Let's underscore.
It was at one point canon.
It's not now, but when it was written, this was real deal.
It was super a thing.
And
it's funny.
G-canon
it's set. This is something I felt bad I didn't clarify to you when you were reading it, but this is set during the Old Republic video game.
Yeah.
Or, well, not during the video game, but during the events that lead up to the video game.
Right.
So it's kind of funny because both books kind of tie in to an online MMO, only I think Red Harvest does it better.
Yeah, it was interesting to me too, and this is something, just kind of a side note that I expressed to you too, is that I knew it was set like in the Old Republic era, but I was so confused because like the Jedi are aware that there's a Sith Academy just kind of chilling out. And I was like, well, why is that's not okay? Like they know where it is. They're just kind of letting it be there. I'm like, this is not right. Like, you're supposed to do something. Like, you don't have to go all New Jedi Order Jedi and police everything in the galaxy,
right?
Vigilante style.
That is a streamcast I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, me too. But shouldn't you do something?
Right.
And the answer was no, you should do nothing.
Yep.
It's all good. It's just fine.
I think my favorite, least favorite thing, if that makes sense, like, I don't like this, but I have to laugh at it to accept that it's there, is the brother Jedi who has dialogue that is literally ripped out of Taken.
Yeah.
And you understand when this book came out, if you remember Taken with Liam Neeson, that then became like 8 Taken movies in a TV show. And I'm not exaggerating about the TV show. This came out around the same time as that movie. And so it was way more poignant then, because, like, poignant's not the right word because it wasn't sad, but it was way more obvious then because it was still like the meme to quote the I have a particular set of skills, and like everyone did it.
Right.
And then you're reading this part, and this Jedi figures out that his sister's been kidnapped, and he's literally force projecting to a Sith Lord, I have a very particular set of skills. I was like, this is a little ridiculous.
Well, the thing that bothers me about it, about the brother character, is that he is completely useless to the entire
Completely.
book.
He does nothing.
Like, there's no reason apart from needing an extra 60 pages or whatever for this person to be in the book at all.
Right.
Because, like, he goes and he does things, and then he shows up at kind of the climax, and then he dies without affecting anything or anyone. Like, he's not the secret way that things work out. Like, he just shows up, and then he's dead, and then it's like, oh, okay, why were you a thing? I don't really understand.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just because he wanted to put a Jedi in the book that was like a traditional Jedi as opposed to, because like Zoe, the character of Zoe is a Jedi, but she willingly, I'm assuming willingly joined the Jedi Service Corps.
Right.
So she didn't have a lightsaber, and she's not a Jedi Knight. She's a Jedi, but not a Jedi Knight. And this is a thing you don't really see in the movies, but you see more in the expanded universe. Really more in the Legends universe than in current canon. But there were other factions within the Jedi that would go and do agricultural work or medical work, or would chart galactic hyperspace routes or that type of thing. Basically doing service for the galaxy that wasn't being an ambassador, being a diplomat, but also engaging in aggressive negotiations.
Right.
So she was, and a lot of times Jedi joined that when they washed out of being a Jedi, but she joined it presumably willingly.
Right.
And she, her thing is plants, and so she was brought along with this force-sensitive orchid because the Sith, basically a Sith Lord was searching for immortality. And to answer your question earlier about the Force, I really liked how the Sith were presented.
Sure.
Because the Sith looking for immortality is 100% a Sith thing.
Right.
And so she was only brought along to keep the orchid alive. And so I'm wondering if the author added Trace, the brother, to just have a traditional Jedi or what. But I'm also kind of wondering if it's just not a thing for him. I wouldn't know without reading more of his books.
Yeah.
But if you go back to Death Troopers had the two brothers in it.
Right.
And to spoil Death Troopers fairly significantly, so if you want to read it, mute me for 10 seconds, starting now. One of the brothers dies, and the other brother has to deal with that. So I'm wondering if Trace being in there wasn't just, how would you say his last name? Schreiber? It wasn't just Schreiber doing that. Like, I wonder if that's a thing he does in more of his books, just to kind of explain why the brother was even there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that would kind of make sense. It was funny to me because it just doesn't impact the plot at all. Like,
Right.
He doesn't even really interact with any of the important characters until the end when he dies.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when, what was it, Big Bang Theory broke the news to the world that Indiana Jones, like, is entirely irrelevant to the plot of, what is it, Last Crusade? Or not Last Crusade, I think it's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, the plot of Raiders of the Lost Ark would have happened exactly the same if Indiana Jones wasn't in it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because they
still and then the internet died that day.
Yeah. Yep, I'd forgotten about that. But another thing that I really liked about this, and I think this is one thing you were kind of getting at there too, is we don't have, to my knowledge, especially not in new canon, we don't get a lot of like Sith alchemy. Like, we know that's a
Which
thing.
Is something I really miss. Right. I hope we get again.
Like, I mean, I guess you kind of get that with the Night Sisters in Clone Wars a little bit. But like
Yeah,
we don't
at least they bring back dark side magic.
right. But we don't really get a strong sense of that most of the time. You know, we have the kind of Sith that we know, but we don't get this kind of alchemical, magical kind of component, which is exactly what is going on here because Darth, what's his name, Scabrous, is that
Yes.
is the one that's trying to, you know, create this thing that's going to keep him alive forever. And I really like that notion. You know, that's why he needs the plant because, I mean, at least the way I interpreted it, because the plant was force sensitive, like that's what allowed for the virus to work the way it does, like the way it was intended to, not just the way it kind of misfires.
Yes,
it was something.
Something about it being force sensitive, and I think it's tied into, to kind of sidetrack you for a second.
That's fine.
Is Scabrous' real plan wasn't just to make the virus and become a zombie himself.
Right.
He made the virus to become a zombie, and I think he needed the force element because his goal was to kind of exist in this limbo between being a zombie and being not,
right.
where he could have the powers, quote unquote, of being a zombie, where, you know, you don't feel pain, you don't hunger, in the way like we normally would. You don't need to sleep, you don't need rest, you won't die because you're immortal because you're a zombie.
Right.
But to keep his consciousness, and I think the force element was how he was going to be able to do that. So I think that's why he needed it, but I might not be fully understanding what was going on.
Let me ask you this too, because like the whole point of this was that he was creating this virus and he was going to infect himself with it, which I guess everything else is just kind of a side effect. But then like he had this special knife that he was going to sacrifice Zoe with. Like, like because like that was going to be the thing that like sealed the deal, was when you use this special, like not a lightsaber but like an actual like Sith inscribed sword to sacrifice a Jedi with, that was somehow going to be
it was like the heart of a true Jedi or something.
So I guess my question is, what like like would that, I guess in fiction, do you think that would have worked? Like it doesn't in the book, but if he had murdered her in the book, knowing what we know about the Force and everything, like, is he just wrong?
I think it's pertinent that like whatever text he was following was written by someone who also didn't get this to work.
Right.
So I think that's an important thing to remember. I would assume the logic is, if you assume the dark side is death, and the light side is life, then having the heart of a dying Jedi would be like a way to keep light within you, because as a Sith you don't have any.
Right.
Like I would assume that's what the logic is, but I don't know. Like the way I always have seen like Sith alchemy and Sith magic, and you see Sith magic, like it's not necessarily Sith magic, but dark side magic with the Night Sisters in canon, and then in Legends, Darth Zana, who is the apprentice to Darth Bane, did Sith magic.
Right.
It was just another way of experiencing the Force. So like instead of through meditation and visualizing, you would do these things, and these things would help you visualize what you're doing. Like there's a couple different, I think it's actually a Star Wars novel we're going to get to soon. I think it's in one of the new Jedi Order books. They talk about how a Jedi doesn't need to wave his hand to do a Jedi mind trick.
Right.
That the waving of the hand is what allows the Jedi to believe that they can perform the Jedi mind trick.
Right.
It's just a thing that they do. So like Sith magic is just a way to experience the Force. Sith alchemy is a little bit different, because you're obviously putting bits and bots together, but it's probably still a belief thing. But you can believe all you want. I don't think taking the heart out of a Jedi is going to do anything.
I mean, and even if it did, this is maybe another plot issue that I had with the book. And again, I really enjoyed this. So like these things are nitpicks above anything else, which is something Star Wars fans are used to. But like, if the goal is to sacrifice a Jedi, like, wouldn't it be an awesome thing for Darth Scabrous that another one just randomly shows up?
Right.
Like, okay, I'm not gonna sacrifice her, but I did actually kill you. So like
Right.
why is that not a thing? I don't know. I guess like I kind of thought about that too.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing I really liked about, or unless you have something.
No, I was just gonna comment on what you said. So go ahead.
Yeah, another thing I really liked the Sith Academy as a setting.
Mm-hmm.
I liked because it really like brought me into the KOTOR games, like when you're there on Korriban, and you get to see like all the interactions of Sith students, and it really kind of puts you in that moment, and you can see all of the like interactions between them and the competition between them, and like the rivalry, and like this notion of like most of them are like really cutthroat. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
care if you die if it helps me, advance my own personal career, which is very very Sith thing to do. But one of the things that's a shame to me about this book, if I'm going to keep nitpicking, is that none of the people in the academy survive.
Yeah.
Like I really would have liked the dynamic if at the end of the book, because that's what we got in Death Troopers. In Death Troopers, um, the Imperials end up having to work along with Han and Chewie to survive the
Mm-hmm.
encounter. And I was kind of anticipating, and maybe so it's just a subversion of my anticipation, but like I was anticipating that at least one of the Sith students was going to have to work alongside Zoe
Yeah.
to get off the planet. And I guess they kind of used the bounty hunter character as that,
Mm-hmm.
but I was really hoping that there would be some element of, I mean, because in the same way that it doesn't really make sense for the brother to be there, like it's just a shame that
Yeah.
we get to know all of these characters even a little bit, only to have none of them.
None of them at all make it. And I mean, the none of the Sith surviving thing kind of makes sense in that no one finds this till 2,000 years ish, give or take a century
Yeah.
later. For Death Troopers, Death
Hmm.
Troopers is set between the prequel and the original trilogies.
Yeah.
Um, and this is all the way back, like you said, during the KOTOR games. So I guess it kind of makes sense that there's no real witnesses other than Zoe, who would presumably just be over it all.
Right.
Um, but I would have, to me, it would be interesting if there was like even one, like you said, and maybe that Sith doesn't even go on to do anything, or maybe that person's like, screw it, I don't want to be a Sith anymore. This is too much.
Right.
I'm just going to go over and be my broody, angsty self somewhere
Right.
else. And that could have been interesting. It's
Even,
kind of like a pseudo redemption arc, like not a true redemption arc, like not a comes back from the dark side,
right.
but like I'm at least going to reject the Sith. We'll see about the dark side later. But that's my own bias showing.
I mean, and I guess maybe reading Revan sort of primed me for that too. Like this notion is that you can have somebody who's not renouncing the Sith or the dark side, but is still, working alongside with a character for a common goal. And even I feel like even if one of the Sith students or one of the Sith masters that were there teaching the Lords, like even if they had just worked alongside Zoe and then died, I think I might have felt differently. But it's almost like there were two different stories being told. One is the sort of Scabrous and Zoe story, and the other is these interactions between all the students and the masters, and those stories never really intersect,
right,
or overlap with one another.
Yeah, in any way that kind of becomes meaningful.
Yeah.
Other than, I guess, at the very end, the remaining Sith students that are zombies like attack the ship they're escaping on.
Right.
But
and one of them's on board the ship too, isn't it? Because he.
Yeah.
Um.
The Lusk or whatever, the scariest one.
Yeah, and the bounty hunter sacrifices himself to get out, or to let Zoe get out anyway. Yeah. Lobot's concerned about you saving your game there. Let me make sure that doesn't happen again.
Well, I'll need it for the next time I play Jedi Academy.
Well, we probably won't be streaming long enough for Lobot to save it again, so we'll
I like it. I like that Lobot is concerned.
He is. He's even though you're not playing a game right now, he would be upset if you hadn't saved your most recent progress.
Right.
it's like those games that you play when even after you save, when you go to close it, it still says closing it right now will lose all your progress, and you're like, well, I just did that.
Right, it's like my progress of 1 second.
Yeah. Lobot also thinks lobot.exe is a link that must be.
Is a link. It's especially ironic considering that Fat Bat said that Lobot is confused.
Yep, that's further proof. But one other thing that I like to go back to the Force stuff in the Orchid, which I think it's worth pointing this out. I think we talked about this before when we were talking about it when we read it. But the original name of this book was Star Wars Black Orchid.
It was.
And I guess they thought that was...
it sounded like a really good Reylo novel, so they changed the title.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there you go. I was trying to come up with a way to kind of articulate that, but that's exactly it. It anticipated the Reylos before either Kylo or Rey were a thing. But like the Orchid is so central to what happens. Like one of the things that we see even in Death Troopers is how coordinated the zombies are. And like to have an explanation for that, in that like the virus is sentient because the Orchid was sentient. Like it makes it not just makes sense, but I think from even like a narrative story perspective, it kind of gives it that extra element there of explanation, I guess, but also I just really like that it
but
gives
not
it,
like heavy-handed explanation.
right.
What I like about it is I mean, you could really read Red Harvest or Death Troopers without the other, and you would be fine.
Right.
Absolutely, but they are really good together. And what I like about it is, presumably in Death Troopers, the Empire found this virus.
Yeah.
That they wanted to use as a weapon, and it backfired on them. And I like this idea because, I mean, yes, it makes sense. Palpatine would have been looking for a biological weapon would have been good anyway. But it being of Sith origin,
right,
kind of adds that extra element of why the Empire would have been after it, because presumably Palpatine would have found some sort of ancient text,
right,
or maybe have traveled to this planet himself. And I really liked that kind of logic, like the background logic. Not just it's more than a reference. It's not just a James Luceno, look, I read Wikipedia yesterday kind of reference. Like it's like something that really builds the galactic scape that you're playing in.
Well, and that was going to be another question that I had for you, because we don't really get the in between, like how we move from where we leave it in Red Harvest until, I mean, there's several thousand years there, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, do you think that the Empire, and I don't remember if Death Trooper said it was Vader or Palpatine specifically, which found or was sort of engineering the program, but do you think that they just kind of happened across this somehow, or do you think that if the goal of this virus is immortality, that they found it because they were also looking for immortality? Like, was it just a potential bioweapon for them? Obviously, you know, that idea was not baked into Death Troopers, but like in the larger fiction of Legends canon, was it just a happenstance biological weapon, or was it because Palpatine and or Vader were still looking for ways to cheat death?
I mean, I hadn't considered that, but that's a fantastic point. Because Palpatine in general obviously was big on immortality, but Legends Palpatine, we especially know this. For anybody who's read or is aware of the Dark Empire comics, the infamous, we cloned Palpatine and brought him back, which is how we know doing that in the sequel trilogy is a bad idea. So no, Snoke was never going to be Palpatine, because we tried that once. Which is it's a longer title, but it's the title I prefer. But it would fit with that too, if Palpatine was just looking for ways to be, and I don't remember who spearheaded it or not, and maybe the book didn't say, and maybe that's why we don't remember. But Palpatine at least would have been interested in it. I think Vader would have been less concerned with immortality and more concerned with restoration.
Yeah.
I would see him as healing more than wanting to live forever. Palpatine wanted to live forever.
Right.
So I could see that maybe it's something where he would think it's a biological weapon. Like I could see something where he would hear rumors of a Sith Academy that was wiped out.
Right.
And then he'd figure it out, but then maybe study Scabrous' work and go, maybe I could do this.
Right.
But it's kind of a risky plan. Like I feel like Palpatine's not dumb enough to go, well, it looks like 2 Sith Lords have failed to do this.
Let's make it through.
3rd time's the charm.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that makes sense to me. It just, I don't know, it's just an interesting through line that if the virus came into being as a way of trying to cheat death, then these characters that at least on some level we know are interested in that. Like, it seems interesting that they would be the ones to kind of happen upon it in that way. But another thing I wanted to ask you about is, like, I know it's a very, like, horror film kind of thing to have, like, an ambiguous ending. Like, and so it's the same with Death Troopers. They just kind of leave the infected ship there.
Yeah.
But here,
hope no one finds this.
Here they just leave the planet, and I guess the assumption is that the virus stays on the planet. It doesn't get out.
Right.
But like we also don't see like the New Republic or the Jedi like specifically doing anything to kind of eradicate it. It's just like, it's all right. Yeah. We'll just
there's
leave
no
it
other
there.
life on the planet. Yeah. Maybe it's better left frozen. I don't know.
It's not like let's take our massive armada and try to wipe the face of this planet to avoid the entire galaxy.
Let's take our spare Death Star.
Yeah.
And blow this planet up instead of Alderaan.
But it just seems like wouldn't you do something?
Right.
Like I guess a quarantine is good enough, maybe. But,
yeah, I don't know.
But I don't know.
If they even would. I mean, I guess Zoe would know, but yeah, I think at least the ambiguity for Death Troopers, unfortunately, I think revolves around the zombies. I think became a playable level in Star Wars Galaxies.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's part of why they couldn't resolve it. With Red Harvest, even though it's set during the Old Republic MMO, I don't know if it became a playable level. I never played that one. I don't know if anybody in the chat has played Tor and can tell us if it became a playable level. That might explain it. I don't think it did.
No.
But I mean, in this case, they can't eradicate it, obviously, because it has to tie into Death Troopers.
Right.
But I just feel like the Jedi would seem like either Zoe decides to not talk about it. Maybe she just feels like it's better left unsaid.
Right.
Or the Jedi just really seem unconcerned.
Right.
Or they don't believe her, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so. It was just another thing I kind of thought about is, nothing could possibly go wrong here. We'll just kind of leave it.
Right, it's fine. It's fine.
It'll be okay. Do you have any other moments or big things about the novel that stood out to you?
One part of that book that never really left me was the now, I'm saying that and I can't remember what it's called, but the training room.
Oh, right. Like the pain thing.
The pain about. Something. It's the name of one of these chapters. I'll thumb through it here and find it. But I really liked that. This, like, death room that you go to.
Right. So was the purpose of that room like agility training, or was it like endurance training where this is going to really suck and we'll see how long you can take with it? Or is it, let's see how much in tune you can get with the Force to try to avoid these different like traps and snares?
I would think it's all of the above. I would think it's just a room that can kill you and you just kind of throw a student in there and see what they do would be my assumption. And if they beat the room by destroying the room, great. Marat, or however you would say his name, the one Sith student that kind of conquered the room, he did it by just climbing out of it, which no one had ever done before.
Right.
The thing is with Sith is they really value creativity more than you would think. They just value creativity in how you're going to kill someone.
Right.
So I think it's a room that's really meant to challenge you.
Right.
But that's just an idea that's kind of stuck with me, and something I would love to see. Maybe not in this context by bringing this book into canon, but I would like to see in some kind of academy somewhere is the idea of just this danger room. I mean, the Jedi had them, but they weren't made to hurt you.
Right.
Like you'd see just playing the Jedi Outcast games. There's like, the temple that you run through that has tests. But I don't know. I really liked that kind of notion of there's just this room and you have to fight the room.
Right. Yeah, it's a very video game playable kind of notion. One that I would probably suck at if well-timed jumping was involved.
I can't platform. You all know I can't platform for anything.
But I feel like I was saying with the students, maybe it was just that I just really liked the setting of this novel, but I feel like it's a shame that we don't have a lot of other novels. I mean, maybe there are, and I just haven't read them, that kind of give us this this notion of, this is what life in a Sith Academy is like. Like, the closest thing we get to that is the Corbin stuff from KOTOR 1.
One of these days I'm going to make you read the at least the first Darth Bane book. Has a little bit of that in there.
Really? Because I love just the the zombie stuff. I really love the interaction of the Sith students, the blackmail story that was involved there.
That one was weird too.
Yeah, and the way that played out in the end is this backstabbing thing at the later on. I love those interactions, and I would love to see more of that
kind of through line.
Through the different media, we see a lot about Jedi training, but we don't really get a lot about Sith training, at least not in a Sith academy like that.
And what I kind of liked about it, oddly enough, is you point out there's this blackmail storyline and stuff. Is we have the Sith, and it's this grand setting, and we all kind of imagine Darth Vader or whatever when we think of a Sith Lord, and you have the Force, and they have all these big important things that they're doing, and there's a major plot line because one kid's super freaked out because another dude videotaped him naked.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that, going, this is a bunch of Sith Lords. Who cares? It's a little bit different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, it's a big deal, but I don't mean to say that, but I just feel it was just such a strange, it was like the high school from hell, basically.
Right.
All these kids dealing with. It really humanized them. I mean, humanize is the wrong word because not all of them are human, but it
sure.
I don't know. It beingized them. I don't know.
Right.
For lack of a better word, it humanized them and it grounded them, and it made it seem like these are just people who happen to be evil. I don't know. It was kind of funny, and you don't see that in as many things.
Well, and I just feel like part of this, and again, all of this is aside from the main part of the book, which is the zombie stuff, but I feel like there are really interesting stories to tell about the difference between ambition and evil, because some of these kids, I mean, and they're all teenagers essentially, is some of them were ambitious and wanted to advance, but some of them were more willing to do it at the expense of their classmates, and I just feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I remember texting you as I was reading this, I shouldn't be connecting with any of these characters because this is a horror novel and they're all gonna die, and I didn't know that literally they were all going to die.
All of them were,
But as I was reading it, I kept thinking, this is so cool. I really like these interactions.
Yeah.
And I guess it was used more as a setting than a plot device, but I just really liked it a lot, and I think it's a shame that we don't get more of that, especially because the Sith that we see more of are the Darth Bane Rule of Two Sith, and so we don't get the kind of academy
feel.
notion. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was important too, because if these were all evil characters you didn't care about,
Right.
you weren't gonna care when one of them got attacked by a severed head that fell out of the ceiling or whatever was happening in that one part. There's a lot of weird stuff that happened. I liked that we got it wasn't an HK-47, but it was an HK droid.
Oh yeah, sure.
That was fun.
That was fun, and the same kind of mannerisms of speech and stuff.
Yeah, especially when he got the restraining bolt off and he was just like flamethrowering every zombie he could see.
Yeah.
He's like, have I told you that I really hate the Sith?
I also really love the this is one of the more zombie scenes. I really love like the cafeteria scene.
Yeah.
Where they're all in there and then the zombies start to come in. And they're trying to like bar the door, but then they get in another way and they end up being kind of sealed in. And that's where you get the one student, which is the one that survives, that's like, no, I'm going to let this virus infect me because I kind of like it.
Yeah, he was effectively doing what Scabrous was trying to do.
Right.
For a short period of time.
Right. Well, we're coming up on time here. Is there anything else you want to talk about with the novel, or anything that you remember that stood out or that you wish would have been different?
Well, we talked about how, with Star Wars, we like to make sure things kind of worked within the Force and that kind of thing. And I kind of wonder, this book is fun for me to read because it's just crazy.
Right.
Like when I talk to people about it now, when I was reading it, I was telling people about it and I'm like, just go with it. Like, don't think about it. Just read it. It's zombie Sith. Like, just go for it. And it is really fun and I do highly recommend it. But if you could, maybe not even through this book, like if you could just bring Force sensitive zombies back into Star Wars, how would you feel about it?
How would I feel about it? I don't think I would have a problem with it. Like I said, I don't think it contradicted any of the things that we knew about the Force. I would hate for it to be like a big thing, but I wouldn't have a problem with these books being canon, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and there are some zombie-esque type things with the Night Sisters in Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Right. And there was the brain worm stuff with the clones.
Yep.
Too. That too.
I think where it's a problem for, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't let this back into canon, or that I wouldn't have or that I would like absolutely have a problem with Force sensitive zombies. I think for me, what would have to kind of be addressed in some way is I see the Force as springing from life, right? Living things. And the idea of zombies is that they're the undead.
Right.
And so I'm just not sure how, the Force itself could exist. Now, in the book, because the orchid was like still alive, even though it was in the virus. Like the orchid was ground up, but its consciousness was still in the virus. The idea that the Force sensitiveness, it almost seemed like the Force sensitiveness of the virus was still a part of the orchid, maybe not so much the hosts, or maybe connected to the hosts.
I mean, that's kind of how I interpreted it.
Yeah, I guess for me, what I would need is that kind of work around somehow of how the Force can be involved with the dead.
Right. I guess.
And I don't think it's impossible. I would just want to see it.
I guess the easy explanation for that, for me, is that it's not the bodies that are alive, it's the virus that is alive.
Okay.
And so, like, I don't think that what you're saying about the Force stemming from life is wrong. But at the same time, we also know that, Yoda tells us that the Force connects, rocks and stuff too. And
that's true. That's true.
But to the extent that it is about life, I think it makes sense to me that the virus is alive and not the people that it feeds on.
Okay. And something like that, I think, could help me with it. And like I said, just like the consciousness of the orchid kind of helped within that. But even then, just like, I guess even like the force sensitiveness of it. But I mean, did we really see? Did at any point in time did one of the zombies use the force?
I feel like they were still aware of, to the extent that they were aware of their force powers.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like we saw them wielding lightsabers.
Yeah.
But like that's not the same thing as using the force.
Right. I mean, they didn't mind trick anybody. They didn't force choke anybody. No one had force lightning.
Right.
I can't remember. I don't distinct. I feel like they may have used it for their own agility.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It is an interesting thing though. That but yeah, I guess it kind of becomes a point of, I think with Legends canon, it got to the point where Legends canon was so big and there was so much going on that at a certain point, it's like, you know what? Let's just accept the absurd and go with it.
Yeah.
But with current canon, I don't know that we've necessarily hit that point yet.
I mean, in a canon where there were like 5 different explanations for how the Death Star plans got stolen,
or how the rebellion was founded.
Right. It was okay to have a one-off novel about, or a 2-off series about.
Yeah, about zombies. Yeah. And I guess my kind of thing with it is I loved it as like Star Wars with zombies is fun to try it, but it's like this is the kind of thing that was really fun to read as a book, but this is the kind of thing I was actually really afraid of for the Star Wars spin-off films.
All right.
Which seems to be kind of a non-issue now that they're slowing down with them.
Yeah.
But I didn't want Star Wars, but it's a horror movie, or Star Wars, but it's a romantic comedy, or Star Wars, but it's a whatever. Like, I understand that Rogue One was a military movie or a war movie, but in something called Star Wars, that's not out of normal that far anyway.
Right.
And to the extent that Rogue One felt different, it didn't feel that different. It didn't feel trendy, or it didn't feel like it had a shtick. Solo doesn't feel like a heist. It is a heist movie, but it doesn't feel like Ocean's 11.
Right.
I like this as a book, but I feel like I would have problems with like a $200 million Star Wars movie that was zombies. I don't know why. And I say that, but I would totally go see it if they made it. So, you know.
Well, is it the kind of thing that you're all right with genre stories as novels, or is it the kind of thing that you wish we had more of them? Because like we get Star Wars, but it's Ocean's 11 and we call it Scoundrels.
Right.
And we get Star Wars, but it's a horror movie and it's these books. Like, we have other genre books in Legends. We don't really have any of them in new canon. So is it the type of thing that you're okay when it's there, or is it something that you'd like to see more of?
I wouldn't mind seeing. I'm definitely okay when it's there. See more of would just depend on. How do I put it? I just don't want them to do it. I don't want the seed of the idea to be Star Wars, but this trendy thing.
Right.
But if the seed of the idea is, let's take Star Wars in this kind of different direction and play with it, like they did with Rogue One,
right,
then I'm kind of okay with it. Mm-hmm. It's also different to me. Really, the medium we're talking about is important. Like, if you write a novel like that, it's not going to bother me.
Right.
If you have, like our friend Kevin Scott is writing Tales from Vader's Castle, and that's scary.
Right.
I mean, not quite like this. He's not really writing gore in it quite the same way, but it's in a comic, it's different. Or if it's, there were episodes of the Clone Wars that were Star Wars with Godzilla,
right.
But that was a little bit different. But I don't think I'd want that translated to a film. And I don't know why I feel that way.
Sure.
I guess it's because I see films as where Star Wars came from. So that's the thing that kind of needs to remain pure.
Right.
But anything else that is expanded universe, just as long as it's good, I'm fine with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I kind of feel the same way. And I am somebody that I think I would enjoy more genre stuff, but I would still prefer those be novels. or prefer those be episodes of Rebels or Resistance, or
Right.
maybe even like The Mandalorian. I don't know. Even something about seeing a live action TV show, I think would feel different to me
Yeah.
than a novel. But we're right at time.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to say before we wrap things up is that you and I have worked out a reading schedule for ourselves.
We have.
And I don't want to like publish that, but if you would like to read some of these books along with us, we can let you know ahead of time, and you can kind of know what's coming up, I guess. But I think we're wanting to do some more book discussions like this. I know you've got your book club thing going on for Aftermath right now, but I think we're basically getting into the NJO, the New Jedi Order series, in a serious way. So expect more of this type of streamcast where we do some long form book discussion, but we're also still looking for other topics. So as we try to get back to these on a more regular basis, we're going to need other things to talk about. So if you have thoughts or things, you can let us know in comments or on Twitter.
And without jinxing it, we should have another guest coming down the line very soon. So that will be another fun thing.
Even if that doesn't work out, we'll find somebody who can come on.
We'll find it. Something will happen.
Yeah, we'll make that not a lie one way or another.
Yep.
But I think that's gonna do it for us. You can follow us on all the places. You can see all that here on the screen on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. You can come to our forums. Again, there's still that Tumblr out there somewhere.
The mystical Tumblr. You can find it if you use the heart of a dying Jedi.
There you go. You have to kill it right with a special sword, but
the special Jedi killing sword.
You'll find it. It'll give you. It'll spell out the URL on the floor in magic Sith letters. But I hope this has been fun. It's been fun for me. I liked reading this book, and I like doing this stuff for Halloween, and maybe we can come up with another horror type thing to do next year for Halloween. But I think that's going to do it for us today, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.